How's it? Welcome back. Today we're going to install a water filtration system at my house. Now in South Africa we're pretty lucky that for the most part our drinking water is actually pretty good, at least in the metros. And I know completely on the opposite side of that we've got lots of people that don't even have running water, which is terrible. So I can be grateful for the fact that I have drinkable running water at my house. Now, although our water is quite good, what we found recently is the municipalities have been dosing it quite heavily and we're getting a lot of that sort of chlorine smell coming through in the water. Now, when you get that chlorine smell, the chlorine's already broken down, but it's not a very pleasant smell, and it can really sort of affect the taste. So what I want to do is I want to install a water filtration system that is going to get rid of that problem. It's going to clean out the chlorine, it's going to clean out those odors, but it's not going to take the minerals out of the system. So what I've got is a 4-stage system. It's a 3-stage system with just a bit extra on it. The first stage is a filter for the sort of bigger particles, the rust, the dirt, little particles of sand. That's what it's going to take out in the first stage. And then in the second and third stage are both carbon filters, and those are going to filter out the chlorine and a lot of the odor and other chemicals that you're going to find in your water. And then the fourth stage is just another carbon filter. It's just a little bit of an add-on to make sure that, I think it adds just a couple of minerals back to the water that might have come out during the filtration process. Now you also get reverse osmosis systems, RO systems, and they take everything out of the water, all the minerals, all the salts and everything that's dissolved in the water. And it's not really something I want to do, because then you take out a lot of the flavor and you take out a lot of the nutrition of the water. And you may then have to start adding that back. And if you're drinking water that's too pure, it doesn't have a lot of those salts and nutritional things in it, your body's actually going to start to draw out of your body. It's going to draw out the nutrients that would normally be in the water into the water. So you could actually end up dehydrating you by drinking really pure water. So for me, this is the system that I want to have. I want to keep all those nutrients, I want to keep all those minerals in the water, but I just want to take out some of the chemicals and the smell. And that's going to be especially helpful when drinking water that we boil. It should help with the lime scale in things like the kettle, and water for beer. And the reason I want it for beer is that normally I'm having to buy 5-liter mineral water containers, and those containers are single-use plastics. They're not really reusable. They've got to be recycled, which we hope gets done when we send it off. But it's just not very friendly to the world, to the environment. So we need to try and be better. We need to try and reduce our footprint, and that's why we're going to try and start filtering our own water. So to install the system, I'm going to install it underneath the sink. This is an under-sink system, they call it. You get an under-sink system that you use with a little tap like this, and that means that you are just filtering the water that comes out of this little tap, which I'm going to install in the sink. You get another option for under-sink systems which filter all the cold water coming through the tap. It's called an inline under-sink system. Unfortunately, we don't have the capability to install that because our plumbing is all in the walls, and there's no tee-offs under the sink to get water. And that also means today we're going to have to drill to the outside to pick up the nearest cold water supply out of a copper pipe. And there's a third type of system you also get, and that is a whole house inline system, and that's where you filter all the water coming into your house. For us, that's a bit of an overkill. There's not really enough space to put it in. It's quite expensive, and I'm not too worried about filtering the chlorine smell out of the water that's used for showers, baths, toilets, washing machine, that sort of thing. So this, for us, is the best and most practical solution. So this is the spot I've chosen to install the tap. I've gone through a couple of ideas, but at the end of the day, this is probably the most out the way. There's access from underneath to get the water supply connected on. There's nothing in the way. I don't have to go through the granite, which I don't really want to do. So that's probably going to be the most practical spot. So we need to drill a 10 or 11 millimeter hole for this, and it's going to sit just like this. And you've got a little tap. You can move out the way if it's in the way, and that should work well. So I've already drilled a little pilot hole. I'm now going to drill an 8 millimeter hole in there because that's the biggest bit I've got, and then I'm going to use a Dremel just to open it up, just those last 2 millimeters to make this fit in. I'm looking for quite a snug fit. I don't want anything to move around. I want to be able to tighten it up nice and tight and make a snug fitture. Oh, eventually, what a flippin' mission. Okay, there we go. Made the hole. I'm just going to make sure everything fits underneath nicely. And then we can move on to drilling the hole outside to get the water line in. So I've done a bit of a test fit here, and it fits quite well. Something you've got to be careful of is these things come with like a big flat nut washer thing that screws on the bottom or wherever it's going to be, countertop or the sink or whatever. You've just got to make sure you've got enough space underneath here to actually get that nut all the way around. So here, this is just I made this hole just far enough from the edge of the bowl of the sink so that the nut could actually turn inside. So this is now pretty good, as good as it's going to be. I'm going to put the handle there just to keep it a bit out the way, so when you don't have something, if you're using the sink, there's nothing in the way, you can just move it out the way like that, so it doesn't really affect you that way. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pull this out a bit, and then I'm just going to squeeze a bit of silicone around here just to seal up that hole underneath, tighten it back up, and then we move on to the rest of the things. So this is actually the nearest water supply I have. I need to tie into this line, and I'm going to drill a hole through the back here, and I should come out underneath the sink. Now what I was going to do is I was going to put in a compression fitting like this one, and I was going to put in a compression fitting with a threaded end, and then you can thread in a little isolation valve and feed it in, which was fine. But then I discovered this thing. Now this is a clamp on well, I don't know what it is, a self-piercing clamp. And what happens is that you clamp this onto your copper pipe, you undo this, enough all the way, you clamp this onto the pipe, and then you turn this needle valve all the way until it actually pierces into the pipe. And then when you release the needle valve, water flows, and you can close the needle valve to close it up again. So this is probably the perfect solution for what we need. All the parts that are going to be in contact with the copper are brass, so there shouldn't be any issues with any sort of corrosion, I would hope. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this guy here, pierce in, and then run a water line, I think, over here. So I've measured the inside and the outside, and there's kind of a little gap behind my cupboard that I'm going to try and aim for. It's right against the wall, so I think I need to draw 660 up from the DPC, straight in, maybe at a slight angle, and I should then come out the hole that's already in the cupboard. Holding thumbs. So you'll see I'm drilling up at kind of an angle here, and that's because I can't actually get, the drill in with the sink in the way. So I've sort of adjusted where I know I need to be, and I hope I come out in the right place at the end. All right. Okay, cool. So that was easier than I thought. Now I'm going to clamp on the water supply, and we can start doing the connections on the inside. Now I'm guessing you could probably do this with the water supply on, but I'm not going to take that chance. I'm going to switch for the water. I'm just going to clean off a little bit of this paint that's here, and then I'm going to screw this guy on. So I'm just going to tighten that on nice and tight, and then I'm going to connect the water pipe, and then I'm going to connect the water pipe on the inside, and then we're going to do the pipe pierce trick and see how it works. Okay, new plan. That thing I've got, that self-piercing Magodi, is trash. It just completely stripped before it was even tight on the pipe. The nut that holds the tap in place also stripped before it was even tight, so it's really been a mare of a day. So I think I'm going to epoxy the tap in, but before I get that far, I just want to get the water connected. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a compression fitting in here, compression T, then have a little nipple, and then it's going to go onto this fitting that actually came with the system. So I've blanked off this end, tightened this end onto this little nipple, and I'm going to install that over here. I think this was my original plan before I found that unit. I'm going to send it right back on Monday because it's rubbish. So I'm just going to come to this pipe, clean off the paint, and then we'll do that. So there was obviously still some water sitting in this pipe because it doesn't actually flow down. It's got a little bit of a dog leg here, so just always be aware of the water. Okay, so compression fittings are pretty easy to use. You just got to make sure that you use all the right bits. So you've got this collar, which is the most important thing, because that's what actually grips the pipe and makes that connection tight. So you don't need any sort of sealant, it's just brass, and you've got this brass collar, and you've got your brass end that goes on here. So I've got the ring in here, and what happens is as you tighten this up, it fits inside there and it grips your copper pipe and it makes a completely watertight leak. Then I've put this nipple on the top. I've used Hessian because we're using galvanized pipe. Galvanized pipe, you need to use Hessian with. It just cuts right through thread tape. So hopefully that's a good enough connection. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this fitting on, and I've got rubber seals in here. Instead of using thread tape or anything, it's actually going to seat against the washer, and that should make a perfect connection. Okay, fitting done. Rubber seal, all holding, we're looking good. So I'm going to stop this for now, carry on a bit later. So after a very frustrating day yesterday, we got a tie into the waterline. I left this overnight because I was irritated. I just wanted to make sure it's not leaking, and then I thought I'd carry on this morning. So there's not a lot of work left to do. What we're going to do is literally push the pipe into this fitting here, and that's the connection done. And then on the filter side, you've got to do the same thing. And the last sort of connection we have to make is between the filter and the tap, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So what's happening on this side is that when you push this in, there's just some little teeth inside there that just grab it. And if you ever need to release it, you take off this little blue thing that's just holding it in place, take that off, and you can push this fitting in, and it releases those teeth. So it's called a pushing connector. We use them all the time in air connections, but they're good for water as well. Before I plug it in though, I just want to flush this to make sure all the gunk that's left inside here from when we did this connection is out. Okay, so that's all cleaned out. We're going to make the connection here. Just make sure you don't switch it on before you've connected the other side. And then I just want to make it a little bit neat. Now where I'm installing this is going to be very difficult to show you how to make the connection for the water pipe onto this tap. So I'm just going to show you here, because I'm going to be inside underneath the cupboard trying to show you that. It's going to be very difficult. So what you've got is this is your tubing that comes in, and with your pipe or with your tap you're going to get these two little pieces of plastic. So this is a little support, kind of like a PEG system that we've done before, and this is the little collar, kind of like a compression fitting like we've done as well. So what you do is you take this little insert and you stick it into the pipe that you want to connect. I've already got one in here like this. So you stick it in there, and that stops this pipe from crushing when it gets tightened up. Then what you need to do is take your screw-on end, stick it over your pipe, stick over your fitting as well. So you've got your fitting on there, you've got your screw-on bit, and then you just literally stick it on the bottom here. It makes a nice little seat, and you screw this tight. And the same as that copper compression fitting, as you tighten it up, it's just going to grip that pipe and make a good watertight seal against the tap. That's all you need to do. Give this a good tighten, and then you're set to go. So we're going to do that underneath the tap. I won't be able to show you when I'm doing it, it's just a bit confined. And then what I just need to do here is make sure these are all ready. So this is the inlet side. It goes through the particle filter first with this spun fiber cartridge, and then it progressively goes through more intense carbon filters to filter out the finer particles and the chemicals. So this is the inlet, this is the outlet. I'm just going to take these off, make sure that the filters are ready, and then we can install it. Okay. So it's important to have all three of these filters in place, because if you don't, what can happen is that the stuff that, if it passes through this one, will start to block up your other filters. Okay, this guy I believe is ready to go as is. You'll get this little tool with your water filter, and you can just use this to grip the filter just to make sure it's tight. You don't want any leaks. Cool. So let's put this under the sink and get going. Okay, so here I've put it underneath the sink. This thing does have some little screw holes you can mount it on, but this fits just perfectly on the shelf next to the sink. It's not going anywhere, so I'm not going to have to secure it at all. And it means I can easily pull it out if I need to when I need to change the filters, which you will have to do every year. So I've connected up the inlet side, which is this pipe coming in at the back. I've connected up the outlet side up to the tap. I've put water on, the whole system filled up with water, you can hear that. I've checked there's no leaks. And then I know this tap is extremely wobbly now, but I'm going to deal with the supplier with this on Monday. I'm going to send them an email and find out if they can sort out this problem, because their block nut just completely stripped when I installed it. And here we have nice, perfectly clean drinking water. Now I'm going to let this run for about 15 minutes just to clean the filters. That's what they recommend, just to let everything come out of the system, and then it's good to go. Alright, so that was a pretty simple job. So I wouldn't recommend ever buying one of those clamp-on self-piercing units. They are absolute garbage. Or at least the one I had, the thing was made out of aluminium with a brass screw in it, and that aluminium was way too soft and the threads were way too shallow to really tighten it at all. I mean, it stripped absolutely immediately. It didn't even get tight in the pipe before it started to strip. So wouldn't really recommend one of those. Better to put a compression fitting T in. Even better if you've got a connection under your sink already, maybe at your dishwasher. There's a connection that you can reduce with a T-piece. Way easier to do. But otherwise the system's pretty straightforward, pretty plug and play. Now I'm just going to let that clean itself, and then we're going to have good drinking water. So if you found this interesting, found it useful, let me know in the comments. Consider giving the video a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time, stay safe. Just a quick update. I did speak to the supplier of the water filter, and they immediately shipped me a replacement nut for the tap to go underneath the sink, a metal one, and a replacement self-piercing clamp. So big ups to Blue Spot Water, who sorted that problem out very quickly.